Hey gamers, I'm back with my third collection video, my second one revolving around Sony systems. So I'm going to go through my games for the PS2 and PS Vita, the second home console and second handheld PlayStation. Again in alphabetical order, starting from PS2, then moving on to PS Vita. First game is Armored Core 3. Now I got this from a friend recently and I haven't played it yet. It's a mech fighting game from what I gather, but I've also heard that it's kind of inaccessible to new players, so I'm not really planning on playing that anytime soon. The game I am playing at the moment is Castlevania Curse of Darkness, and I am loving this game. It's like a symphony of the night with monsters that follow you around. Think Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance kind of Pokemon vibe. I like this game a lot. It's a really solid 3D Metroidvania kind of game with RPG elements and equipable weapons like in Symphony of the Night. But my only problem with this game is how cumbersome the movement feels. Like there's some long corridors that your character has to traverse and he moves really slowly. Like even the dodge roll is kind of useless again until you get the double dodge as far as movement is concerned. Next is Crash of the Titans Monster Edition. I loved the Crash series on the PS1, and many people complain that the PS2 games didn't quite match the awesomeness of the original trilogy. But Sierra actually didn't do a bad job with this. It's different from the PS1 games, yes, but it's still a pretty solid action platformer. Crazy Frog Racer, a racing game with the annoying thing. Destroy All Humans, wacky third-person shooter where you play as the villain. I really like the wacky guns and weapons and ways to kill people in this game. Highly recommended. Deus Ex, a classic game for the system, for any system that it's on. I really shouldn't need to say anything about this. If you're a collector, you definitely know about this game already. Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. I actually haven't managed to beat this game yet. I find the Devil May Cry series to be really challenging. I'm like not even halfway through the game. Really solid game by Capcom. Next is an RPG, Disgaea, I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Hour of Darkness. This is the first game in the series, I believe. RPG by Koei. I bought this like a month ago. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I hear it's a really good game, so I'm looking forward to trying this out. Fortunately, this is not the original box that it came in. I'm looking to get a spare PS2 box to put that in. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Now, if you've watched my DS collection video, you would know that I really hate the version of this game for the DS. But the PS2 version, while still a pretty bad game, is much better. It's kind of like a bad version of Ultimate Alliance. FIFA Street 2. See, I just have this loose. I mean, the case isn't even a PS2 dual case. It's a decent sports game. What can I say about it? Next is another game I'm playing through at the moment, Final Fantasy XII. I was actually looking for Final Fantasy X, but then I remembered the remake was coming out for the PS Vita, so I decided to get 12 instead, since they also have this at the store. And I didn't regret my decision. It's a pretty addictive RPG. I'm like halfway through the game, and for the first time I actually have to kind of grind, so that's kind of annoying. My first game for the PS2, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Not a bad game per se, it's pretty average, but it has horrible loading times and PS1 like graphics. Like, okay, some of the textures are quite good, I must say, but the buildings especially look just so cubical, like something you'd expect out of a game coming out sometime in the middle of the PS1's lifetime. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I got this in a trade for a book I had lying around and haven't had the chance to play this yet. I have no idea if it's as good, worse, or better than the second game. Jak and Daxter, the precursor Legacy. The first Jak and Daxter game, and the only one in my collection, unfortunately. But I really, really love this game, and I'm planning on picking up the HD remakes. Great platformer by Naughty Dog. This game I picked up 2 days ago and haven't had the chance to play yet. It's Killer 7. The only thing I know about this game is that it's kind of like a rail shooter, and it's from the same wacky mind that brought us games like Lollipop Chainsaw. The plot is about this assassin killer dude who has 7 split personalities and each with their own abilities, and I am looking forward to playing this. Next is my favorite game series on this system. Kingdom Hearts, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Now, funny story behind this. This was the first game in the series I got, and it was just lying around on my shelf until I decided to play this. Now, you may know that it has an infamously long tutorial phase where you play as Roxas. Well, I didn't make it through that, not because it was hard, but because it was so tedious and boring. And I just shelved it again, and one of my friends came over, and that was back when I had my shelves split into categories like beaten, not beaten, unplayed. And he found it odd that I hadn't beaten this game, and he convinced me to give it another shot, and I loved it. I went on a Kingdom Hearts spree that summer. I got every game in my collection and beat it like all in those 3 months. Chain of Memories was especially hard to come by as a black label game, mostly because it only came out in the Japanese and NTSC regions. We didn't get a PAL release, and most of the auctions I found on eBay for reasonable prices were greatest hits, and I only like having black label games in my collection. Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Angel of Darkness. Subpar as far as Lara Croft games go, in my opinion. So I haven't given this much playtime. Not very recommended. Need for Speed Most Wanted is my favorite racing game of all time. I used to play this with my cousin, and I found this for like €3 used while I was in Greece this summer, and I couldn't resist because I didn't have it in my collection. It was my cousin's copy we used to play with. Great game. Another game I'm playing at the moment, The First Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. Great puzzle platformer by Ubisoft. A spiritual predecessor in a sense to Assassin's Creed. Rampage, Total Destruction, which I think has Rampage World Tour on it, something like that. Yeah, Rampage World Tour is included in this game. Another one of those games where you play as the villain, you play as the giant monster wrecking the city. Great game, loads of fun, and it's actually fairly lengthy. Ratchet & Clank, Size Matters, is a PS2 port of the PSP game in the series. It's pretty decent, fairly challenging, but not as good as some of the other games in the series. Still though, it's a really fun platformer for the system. Another such platformer is Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the last Rayman game before they started making the Rabbids series. I really enjoyed this game as a kid, but I gave it away at some point in time, and I got it again last summer on the cheap, and I really still love that game. Spider-Man 3. I've only played the PS3 version of this game. I haven't played the PS2 one. It's a pretty solid superhero game. It's nothing to write home about on the PS3, so I assume it's no better on the PS2. Next one I still have sealed. SpongeBob SquarePants, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. Though you can probably see that the seal is kind of damaged here. I got this as a gift when I was a kid, and I never really liked SpongeBob, so I never had a reason to play this. My last game for the system is the Italian Job, LA Heist. This was one of my cousin's favorite games for the system. I got it from him. I haven't given it a shot yet. As you can surmise, it's a racing game loosely based on the movie. It says on the box too, based on the 2003 blockbuster from Paramount. Moving on to the Vita. I've played all my games for this system, so mostly because my collection for it is so small. Army Corps of Hell is my first game for the system. It's by Square Enix. Think Overlord meets Pikmin. It's a really fun game. You can do pretty much everything you can do in the game from fairly early on, but the enemies just keep on coming, and the boss fights are always very entertaining and frustrating, so it makes you want to keep on playing regardless. It was one of the launch titles for the system, and it was a good game to launch with. Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation is the PS Vita spin-off of the series. It uses the same or similar engine to Assassin's Creed 3, even though it has some different mechanics, like the protagonist Aveline can disguise herself as a slave to move about faster and be able to blend in better. She has the assassin's clothes, which you can see on the cover, which give her all the typical assassin abilities, and she can dress up as a noble woman to charm guards, influence people, move around town undetected. Oh, she can get into fights as the lady, and it is frustrating to have to fight as her because she cannot run. It's a pretty solid game, especially for a handheld. It's not as big, it's not nearly as big as Assassin's Creed 3 is, but it still plays pretty well. It flows pretty smoothly. Like I only had the frame rate issues with this once throughout my playthrough, and I would highly recommend this to fans of the series. Everybody's Golf is the only game for the system I haven't beaten yet, mostly because it's a golf game, and there is nothing special about golf games. But hey, if you like golf games, then give this a shot. It has really cute graphics and stuff. Mod Nation Racers Road Trip is a really fun racing game for the system. I believe this was also a launch title, and I had a lot of fun playing this. Now, Need for Speed Most Wanted, the remake for the Vita. Also a fun game, but it doesn't really hold a candle to the PS2 game. That was like one of my favorite games of all time. This is just a good racing game. It was disappointing, but if you haven't played the original, then you don't stand to be disappointed, and you just have a really fun racing game available with lots of stuff to do, lots of cool cars to unlock. Pretty cool game. Rayman Origins is the first game I picked up for this system, and I did not regret my choice. It is an amazing game, an awesome platformer with a good level of challenge, great level design, amazing artwork. I would recommend this to anyone of any age who likes any kind of game. Just play this game. Next is Wipeout 2048, one of the launch titles for the Vita. I got this like a week ago, and I've already beaten it, like gotten elite in almost everything. Not just because it's kind of a short game, but also because it's a really fun game series. I really like the Wipeout series, even though it's kind of like the Call of Duty of racing games, because nothing really ever changes. Like even the tracks are the same in some of the games, but it's just so good that more of the same is exactly what you want. Anyway, that's all my games for these two systems. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week for my PS3 video. Cheers.